News and views on Salam Media with me, Julie Ali. Please do become a part of the conversation. First up, we talk with Public Interest South African SA founder and chair, and that, of course, is you, Tebogo Khase. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julie, and thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you, and we do look forward to your insights into this very important matter. We understand that Advocate Mahlape Selo, who acted for the presidency, obviously regarding the Section 89 Ramaphosa impeachment panel, the calls are for her to have stood down simply because she also acted for the suspended ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule in a lawfare case against President Cyril Ramaphosa in 2021. So where do we stand with this matter? There is a strong, strong feelings about this matter.
Yes, certainly, Julie. And at the outset, let me make it clear that we are not casting aspersions on Advocate Sello's integrity per se, but the point is she had been appointed or invited to serve in circumstances where another individual here, Professor Richard Calland, had been asked to recuse himself because of a perception of bias. And yet, the matter that, the issue that you've just raised, the fact that he had been a counsel for Ace Magashule, whom we know that politically there had been entanglement with the president of South Africa, who's now the subject of an investigation by this panel. That raised, or ought to have raised, a reasonable apprehension of bias. And remember, bias is not only just real, even perceived bias give rise to a potential conflict or perception of conflict. And with that in mind, she ought to have just recused herself and not accepted the appointment. And yet she did not. And thus we find ourselves where we are today.
What happens with this, the findings of, obviously, the impeachment panel? Does it still then go ahead, despite these questions being asked about her bias against the president or towards the president?
I'm not sure if it's going to have much material impact, but certainly, if I understand correctly, the president must have set it out as one of the reasons why this report ought to be upended. In other words, must be set aside because of that. But whether that point will hold, it's something else, because one could argue that the presidency ought to have raised that point prior to her appointment, when she was first suggested, or her name put forward as a potential panelist. But the extent that they allowed that to happen, they cannot come back later and complain about the fact. And also, they may also probably argue that, look, counsel for lawyers here we're talking when we talk counsel, we're talking lawyers, especially senior lawyers. There's a whole thing about their independence, that they're independent professionals who one day could be representing the presidency, and the next thing they could be representing an adversary to the presidency. But that being the case, ordinarily, in order to remove any perception of bias, and especially for lay people such as ours, there ought to be that that perception, or that presence of mind on counsel, to actually say, maybe I should actually step back and recuse myself insofar as this matter is concerned. In fact, I have seen it happen in some instances where counsel recuse themselves because they may have represented you on a matter that regards to, or they may have represented the opposing side on a matter that involves you, where you're asking them to represent me. In fact, in most instances, you go to most law firms, they'll first do a conflict check to see if they may have been doing work for the client that you're trying to engage or to sue, or have an adversarial legal process with. So it is a pity that that those considerations didn't seem to play any role or have any bearing on Advocate Cyril, and she went on to involve herself in a matter that she ought to have maybe just refused to participate in. In fact, there are some senior legal minds that I know of who declined to participate. Some would have cited that their proximity either to the president or one of the parties, remote as it might have been, may be perceived as having a given or could give rise to perception of or apprehension of bias. And just on that point alone, they said, no, look, I'm not saying I'll be biased, but because there might be a perception, real or not, that I'll be biased, therefore I'll have to decline this appointment. And strangely enough, Ms. Cyril didn't do that. In fact, in one of the clips involving Esma Khashula, if I recall, if my memory served me well, I remember there was some dancing in the group that also involved another advocate, Dalim Pofi, and other lawyers. I can't remember if there might have been a point that was found in favor of Mahashula at some point, and everybody, including her, everybody was chuckling, but she was not dancing. The rest were just dancing and celebrating. So you cannot say emotionally she was not involved or entangled in any way. She was. So whether that has got any bearing to actual bias, obviously that's a subjective matter.
I just want to share something with you, and I'd like your response on it. We know that Magashule was suspended on the 3rd of May 2021, after which he unilaterally drafted and dispatched a midnight letter of suspension against Ramaphosa. The date stated there is the 5th of May 2021. The letter stated that Ramaphosa had been reported to the Serious Offences Directorate and that the matter of sealed documents relating to his CR17 campaign prior to and during the ANC National Conference was pending before the courts, and this was, of course, a report filed by News 24. In argument, Celo also raised questions about Ramaphosa's campaign fundraising for his 2017 bid for the ANC presidency and the allegations of corruption against him. So here again, she made comments, and I think regarding this statement, does kind of raise the issue regarding her bias in this matter.
Yeah, look, we are human beings. You cannot say we're not robots. Where you say, look, what sentiments I said yesterday or the other day about you that I hate you or I dislike you, disregard that. That was yesterday. Today I love you. Today I believe you are a man of integrity. Today I believe you wasn't go. Whereas yesterday I was agitating for your ouster, which was the case in this instance. So I mean, forget about the law. I mean, we're human beings, and we look at matters that confront us or that we handle in that with that prism that you cannot dissociate yourself from sentiments that you had expressed earlier, where you had said President Ramaphosa must go. Whether it was on behalf of a different client altogether. It might very well be that given an opportunity now to have him go, you say, okay, I may have lost that instance. Now here's a chance that is presenting in itself for me to obtain that which I had failed to obtain or to achieve through the process, an earlier process. So that is precisely at the heart of it all, that she ought to have said, look, there may be perceptions. I may not be biased. I may look at this on the facts, but to the extent that I have failed to get rid of Ramaphosa in the past, the perception will be created that maybe I'm biased, I'm going to use this process to achieve those very ends that I had failed to achieve in the past. So yes, that is a key point that you ought to have taken into cognizance.
Two issues here that comes up as well is you suggested that the presidency failed to object for Celo to be on the panel. Had they objected before the impeachment panel sat down to do the investigation, would they have been able to have gotten her replaced, number one? And number two, where to from here? What happens now that these questions are being raised, these questions of bias, the questions around, Celo having been the right person, or should have been reconsidered under the circumstances. And let me throw in the last question regarding this matter. The elective conference is just around the corner. Perhaps, just perhaps, are the different parties playing for time to put this aside let the conference go ahead, and then revisit this perhaps in the new year with maybe a different outcome, knowing that whatever was meant to have been achieved at the elective conference will have been achieved without this being a thorn in anyone's side.
Yeah, yeah. The first point first, we've got abundance of attorneys and retired judges who could easily, or I mean lawyers, if, let me put that way, and retired judges who could easily have come to the fore, and I'm sure they did on a list that the speaker may have had. They probably had hundreds of other potential individuals who could have served. So we're not only stuck with these three, certainly, and so they could have replaced Cyril at any time if they had so choose. And yes, the question is why did the presidency or his lawyer never? Why didn't they actually object early on? So that's a question that they must ask, and it doesn't look good if you didn't raise it at the time and you only raise it now. It might be seen as an afterthought. And secondly, yes, timing is everything. And you one point is I don't see how they would have wanted to postpone, or anybody would have agreed to have this postponed to until after the ANC conference, because this has got everything to do with the ANC conference and everything else, because Ramaphosa's detractors seems to have been throwing everything, fridges and furniture, and see what else could stick to make sure that he doesn't come back as ANC president. Even now, this may very well be raised on the floor of the conference to say, Ramaphosa, but you've got a cloud over your head. There's a panel that yes, you may have been cleared, or you are busy being cleared by the courts, or having approached this Concord. If the matter is not finalized before the 16th of December, it will be a cloud. And obviously, politicians would not want to wait for the truth to prevail. They'll use it still as a hammer to actually try and hammer him down and say, look, you must leave. You're just as corrupt as the rest of the other people that are being pursued for corruption. So this has been used as a tool to actually get rid of Ramaphosa. And if you look at the lineup, the kind of people who are actually latching on this are the kind of people who are in the crosshairs of the criminal justice system, people who have been charged, people who have served time in jail or are about to serve time in jail, and people who know that there are major investigations against them, either by the SIU, including the Dr. Zweli Mkhize, for example. So they'll be happy to see the back of Ramaphosa, and therefore that will clear the way, and it will be an easy walk in the park for some. Even Paul Mashatile might very well even start saying, look, I'm not going to only contest the deputy presidency. I may just as well take my chances and go for the top job, because I might be better placed than Zweli Mkhize, who only has one province backing him. I think it's only one, at the most two, but I think it's one province backing him. Whereas Paul Mashatile may have the backing of more than two provinces, for instance. So yes, it was going to be very, very problematic, and it would potentially even create a constitutional crisis at some point, because who would be replacing Ramaphosa now? Is it David Mabuza? Do they wait for the ANC conference in 2 weeks' time, and whoever emerges as a leader, if it's Willem Kiezer, then automatically he's a shoe-in? So there's a lot of questions that this panel report raises, and we are happy that President Ramaphosa has seemingly reconsidered and may not necessarily be resigning at all. And I'm happy that you'll also be engaging with Brian Hanoko, who's running that campaign to urge President Ramaphosa not to step aside, because to step aside would be a very bad precedent for even him, Ramaphosa. And what it suggests is that he's the kind of person who'd bring flowers to a gunfight. So he must throw away those flowers and pick up his own spear or gun, whatever it is, that equipment that his oppositions are, oppositions are bringing. So let us see how it goes. But certainly on the basis of what we have seen, on the basis of this is a poor report at all, and it doesn't do a retired Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo any favors, because we mainly had thought that he would try and redeem himself. If you'd recall, Justice Ngcobo had attempted to have a constitution change to allow him to become justice for life, and that was turned down by the Constitutional Court, his colleagues. Now his colleagues would have another opportunity now to look at his another outlandish legal idea or legal view, where he made such profoundly outlandish findings, which have no basis on law. I'm not a lawyer, so but I have to weigh in based on what I've learned and I've observed.
Okay, we have a question from a viewer, and I think we've answered part of this question, but let me just pose it to you anyway. What impact does the fact that ACE's counsel served on the Section 89 Ramaphosa impeachment panel have? I guess this has to do with Cicelo that we've been talking about already. I think that question has been answered, but do you want to just elaborate a little more for the benefit of the viewer?
Yeah, the impact it might have had, and remember, we are not saying this as a matter of fact because we are not privy to the deliberations in the panel, or even we are not privy or have access to Advocate Cyril's mind. But it is the perceptions, the reasonable apprehension of bias, given the fact that Advocate Cyril had represented Ace Magashule in Magashule's efforts to oust President Ramaphosa, which had failed. Now it might very well be that they may have seen this as another opportunity to actually achieve that which they had failed to do, that is to get rid of President Ramaphosa through a process that Isma Hashula had tried to do. So whether the actual bias did materialize, we wouldn't know, but it is just the perception. Remember, in law, it is the apprehension of bias that make people step aside. The same way as Richard Calland was requested to step aside. They said, look, we've been favorable to making favorable commentary or analysis to the president. It might very well be that you're bringing that bias, that positive bias towards the president, and you may use that to acquit them. The same thing, the opposite though, could hold with Advocate Cyril. So you've been trying to get rid of the president, making adverse commentary or submissions to court against him. Now you're going to bring that mindset to this process, therefore leave. So that is where it plays out insofar as the perception or a reasonable apprehension of bias on her part.
Two more points I'd like to raise before we wrap up. And the one is in a Daily Maverick interview, Advocate Celo was asked if she should have declined the appointment or stood down for the same reason as Calland. Her response, and I quote, "The panel, having completed its job without you having raised this before, is highly inappropriate and I have no comment." That's her response.
Yeah,
What
that was
would
a
you
full
say
mouth
to
comment.
that?
That was a full mouth comment. What it suggests that she just dig her heels in. She doesn't see anything wrong with it, despite the fact that she ought to be reflecting and be able, maybe yes, there may be a reasonable apprehension of bias, but that did not play any role in my assessment or in my assessment of the submissions that were made. So certainly you can see that she's basically saying, look, trust me, I'm not biased or I wasn't biased, but it doesn't remove the reasonable apprehension of bias.
I think the fact that she shut them down speaks volumes, does it not?
No, absolutely.
Carry on.
That's it. Absolutely does. I mean, the fact that she just shut them down and said no comment further, it shows that it stuck and or it stung her, and she ought to have actually expanded more to say why does she believe that that is not the case, given all those facts that have been laid down.
Finally,
but look, yeah, which is why in some instances maybe may not agree with that. I think it's a strong word. Some people believe that she may have been a hired gun to come and and do the bidding for the RET faction of the ANC. I cannot say yes, I cannot say no, but it is out there.
Okay, that was my thoughts as well. We
Yeah.
know that they are baying for Ramaphosa's blood, and God help us if they do come into full power. Be that as it may, how do we move forward on this matter?
Look, it has to. Personally, I believe President Ramaphosa has done the right thing by taking the report on review. It shook everybody because this is the kind of outcome that even lay people were not expecting. Even some of the experienced lawyers were not expecting this kind of, it has created a lot of debate in the public space, and it probably would raise a lot of or contribute to jurisprudence insofar as untangling the applicability of the PRECA Act, for example, or even POCA in some instances, and hopefully the Constitutional Court will have an opportunity to lay bare as to what is expected and who are the officials that the Act talked about in terms of reporting and what it means by reporting corruption and who are the people to protect. Because there's been toing and froing that PRECA does not ordinarily say people must report it under PRECA anything under 100,000. Every businesses get 100,000 or more stolen from them. It is not for the DPCI to be involved in every criminal theft of 100,000 or more. I mean, every bank robbery that takes more than 100,000 doesn't mean that the DPCI must be involved. No, there's an act. It has to do. The foundation of the act was to do. The objective was to do with corruption, to stymie corruption in both the public and private sector. So we will see how the Constitution finds on this, and it is a good thing that it will be hopefully make its way to the Constitutional Court, and they will hopefully hear it. But there's also another rider. Some are arguing that there is no finality in this matter, so you cannot appeal a finding or a finding that is temporary in nature. I don't share that, and many other lawyers don't share that assertion, because the report itself is a final. It's not an interim report, so it can be taken on review. So that is for the lawyers, and that's why they get paid so much peanuts, as some are claiming, and that's why they'll be having a field day, arguing about that and making money in the process.
My closing thoughts on this whole issue is, goodness gracious me, the Zuma presidency literally raped this country. It is untenable what they did to this country. And my personal thoughts, obviously, is this is Cyril Ramaphosa's private game farm. I don't think, nobody has suggested, and there's no proof to suggest that he was involved in taxpayers' money or any other corrupt dealings as far as the Phala scandal is concerned. It was his own money. That's what my understanding leads me to believe. So why the big noise, and why this step-aside rule being insisted upon as far as Cyril Ramaphosa is concerned? He, so far during his tenure, we've kind of hardly heard of any money laundering, corruption, etc., being suggested in his name, apart from cadre deployment, but not large-scale corruption at all, apart from Phala. And we don't know if that did in fact involve taxpayers' money, the country's money, etc. My understanding leads me to believe it was his own personal finances. But let's leave that to all the legal eagles to sort out. Maybe there is more to unfold or unravel as far as the story is concerned. I watch it with much interest, and undoubtedly you and I will be having many more discussions regarding this matter and other matters going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. I look forward to that, and let's see how it goes. Thank you so much.
Have a safe festive season. Thanks once again for your insights.
Thanks, and you too. And bye-bye.
8:32 exactly. That was Public Interest South Africa founder and chair Tebogo Gaas talking to us about the impact that Ace Magashule's counsel served on the Section 89 Ramaphosa impeachment panel. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Quite a tricky one, isn't it? Okay, standing by to talk to us is concerned citizen Bram Hanekom, and he has started a petition, I'm sure it's him, saying, President Ramaphosa, please don't resign. We still need you. 8:33 news and views right here on Salam Media. Please do become a part of the conversation.